So let's see. 12:05. So I think we have a quorum. And uh Perry, thank you so much for being willing to come and share your experience and your wisdom with us. I met you uh on the ocean uh almost a year ago, I guess.
Hmm.
And uh, adopted you as a friend and spiritual guide on on that boat. And uh, very happy you're here to share your spirit with us today. So with that, I'll give it to you.
Okay, well, it's good to see y'all. I don't know most of you. I've been on a few of these calls. I have a little bit of an idea what you do. This is going to be probably a little different than what you're used to, but I'm going to tell you a series of three or four stories about what I like to call thin places or thin spaces, which is places where the veil between this world and the next world is thinner than it usually is. And I think you'll probably, as it develops, you'll see why I would tell you these stories, and then I think those will create a context for us to do a little guided meditation, and then we can discuss it a little bit. And I have a hard stop in less than 2 hours, so I'll let Adam decide, what the time frames look like. But I want to start with a story from about 20 years ago. I had a friend, he was kind of a seminar buddy, and he was a Silicon Valley biotech CEO. And he called me one afternoon and he goes, I just got fired from my job by the board of directors. And um, basically, they're screwing me out of everything, and I have to start over. And you're better at this entrepreneur thing than I am. Could we talk for an hour every week? And at the time, my career was going extremely well, and maybe you might have even said I was a hot shot. And I thought to myself, an hour a week, that's like a lot. Um, but I said, okay. And we started talking every week. And I was talking him through this transition. And I thought at first that I was helping Tom. Now, Tom was much older than me. Tom was about 30 years older than me. So I was in my early 40s at that time, and uh, and Tom was in his late 60s. And I thought Tom needed me, but it turned out I needed Tom because about a year later, I hit some really serious midlife crisis, like total disaster. And and we kept those weekly conversations going, and pretty soon it was me laying my problems at his feet and asking him for help. And my dad died when I was 17, and so Tom became the closest thing I had to a dad. And he kept me from having some pretty big stupidity spasms, and he walked me through a really tough part of my life. And one night I got a call from Tom, and he says, so I went to the doctor. The doctor said, you've got pancreatic cancer. Get your affairs in order. You're not going to survive. And he was really mad because his daughter and his granddaughter had been in the room when the doctor delivered the news, and he delivered it with zero bedside manner. And Tom was kind of angry, and he was scared. And so we talked about that. And um, and then and Tom kind of appeared and disappeared. He went to Mexico and he got some treatments, and weeks would go by and I wouldn't hear from him. And then we would have some phone calls. And then, and then one day I get this call from his wife, Vicky, and she goes, Perry, you need to come. Now, back then, I didn't realize how serious pancreatic cancer is. It's one of the worst that you can get. And so I flew to Reno, Nevada, which was where Tom lived. And Tom was in intensive care and he was on a respirator. And and his his daughter believed that what Tom had requested was to like to fight with all we're worth to keep Tom alive and for him to survive the illness. And so that's what we're doing. And so I I slept on a couch at Tom's house, and Tom is in the hospital, and I would do my work during the day, and then about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd drive her to the hospital, and I would spend every evening at the hospital, um, being at Tom's bedside, and I'm praying that he's going to get better, and it felt like bench pressing 300 pounds, and um, all the hospital and medical stuff, and so I would go there every day, and it was a lot of work. I don't know, advocating for Tom or whatever, however you want to describe that. And well, one afternoon I go in there, and there's this lady named Linda, and she says, "Hi, I'm Linda, and I speak to Tom in the spirit realm and tell everybody what Tom needs." And I'm like, um, okay. I don't know if I believe that or not, but whatever. And so I hang out for a while, and she says, Perry, um, Tom is telling me that he needs something from you right now. And I said, what's that? And he says, she had known Tom for years. And she said, this is very strange language for Tom to use, but Tom is asking for you to sanctify his body. And I thought to myself, what does that mean? And I thought for a while, and I thought, well, I think I know what that means. And I go find a styrofoam cup, and I put water in it, and I sprinkle it on him, and I baptize him in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And she says, thank you, thank you. That's exactly what Tom needs right now, because his body is floating between this world and the next world, and he's got some things that he needs to get rid of. And that's exactly what he needed. Thank you. And then she starts weeping, and she goes, Perry, this room is full of angels. And I had been playing this CD on the radio in the hospital room, and while this was going on, the song that was playing was saying, cloud by day, fire by night, I need a resting place. And so she has this very emotional experience, and she's seeing things that I'm not seeing. I can sense it. I can feel, um, I can feel that something's going on. And then I had this woman back at home. I live in Chicago, and she's the chaplain of my company. And she texts me, and she says, Perry, I got a memo from the head office. Like, I got a memo from heaven. Very slowly and very deliberately, I heard the words, Tom loves me. And and so I felt like I had done what I needed to do, and I went home, and then a couple of days later, I got called into a meeting, and it turns out, so every night at the hospital, there was always a few family members that would stay in the hospital room. And I found out that the family was in a very vicious fight about end of life for Tom. He had not left a living will or clear instructions about resuscitation and stuff. And so a, he had a daughter who had one opinion, and she had believed that Tom wanted her to fight to the bitter end. And if there was the slightest chance of anything turning around, to just keep fighting. Um, Tom's wife, who was this woman's stepmother, wasn't her biological mother. His wife wanted to pull the plug and be done with it. And the hospital bill was running up at a rate of $20,000 a day, and they didn't have insurance. And so this was all on her. And she did not want the medical bills. And then Tom's brother wanted yet something different from the other two. And they all had, and I had a meeting with a hospital administrator, and I had meetings with everybody twice. And at the end of about 2 hours worth of meetings, I go, this is completely intractable. I have no idea how to solve this. And I get a text from Sue, my chaplain. Oh, we agreed to meet in the hospital courtyard and decide what to do at 5 o'clock. And I get this text from Sue. She goes, go have your meeting at 5 o'clock. You've got Sar Shalom, which means Prince of Peace. And this is going to be okay. And of course, I have no idea how that's going to work. But I went down to the hospital courtyard, and Tracy, the daughter, shows up, and Vicky, the wife, shows up. And Vicky, well, sorry, backtrack. I found out in all my meetings that the reason there was always somebody in the hospital room 24 hours a day was because some family members were afraid that some other family member was going to pull the plug, and they didn't want that to happen. So everybody was just completely on edge. And they're like, well, you're Tom's best friend, maybe you can solve this. And I didn't know how to solve it. So we go to the hospital courtyard. Tracy shows up. Vicky shows up. Vicky says, Tracy, I am sorry for all of the harsh words. And I'm sorry for, threatening different things. And I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings. We're going to do this your way. We're going to fight on. I'm not going to worry about the medical bills. Will you forgive me? And they hugged, and they cried, and they all agreed we're going to keep them going. And everybody went home and got a good night's sleep for the first time in a week. And the next morning, well, hang on. So I go home. I go to Tom's house. And now I'm like, well, what do I do now? I have no idea how long Tom is going to last. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. I've been here for a week. I am absolutely exhausted. Um, should I just stay around? Should I go home? I call my wife. She goes, it was a Saturday night. She goes, you need to go to church tomorrow. I'm going to find you a church. So she looks up. So I'm in Reno, Nevada. I've never been in Reno, Nevada before. She looks up, finds some place, and she texts it to me. All right, that's what we'll do. Next morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, hospital calls. He's about to pass. Get over here. So everybody gets out of bed, gets in the car, drives to the hospital. We walk in the hospital room. It's me, one of Tom's friends, Tom's wife, Tom's daughter, and two of Tom's granddaughters. That's who's in the room. We walk in the room. Tom has just died a few minutes before. His body's still warm. And we stood there in a circle for quite a few minutes. And we just held space for the reverence of the moment. And then Tracy, the daughter, says, "Well, Dad, you held on until everybody worked out their shit. Daughter and stepdaughter reconciled, check. Brother putting down his weapons and going home and getting a good night's sleep, check. Family finally coming to agreement about money, check. Dad, you son of a bitch, you're a genius." And then we stood there for a little longer. And then we went and got a cup of coffee. I went home. And I go, so now it's like 8 o'clock in the morning. I go, "Vicky, you want to go to church?" "Yeah. Yeah, let's go to church." "You got a place?" I go, "My wife texted me a place yesterday. Let's go." "Okay." So we go over to this church and they have church service. And I asked the lady sitting next to me, I go, "Do they have a prophetic ministry here?" She goes, "Yeah, we do." I go, "Who's in charge of it?" She goes, "That guy over there." So I go, "Vicky, come over here." We walk over to this guy. I say, "Hi, my name is Perry. This is my friend Vicky. Um, could you prophesy over Vicky right now?" He goes, "Sure." He didn't ask a single question. He just went. He goes, "You have been ridden hard and put away wet, and you've been wrung out like a dish rag." And then he just goes on about like how much hell she's been through. And he goes, "But God's going to take care of you and things are going to be okay." And he finally gets done and she goes, "Do you have any idea who I am or what's?" "No, I don't have the slightest idea." She goes, "My husband just died this morning." It's like, "Oh, of cancer." He goes, "My wife died of cancer 10 months ago." And then they have this whole conversation about that. And and she felt a lot better. And they announced that there was a concert later on tonight if you want to come back. And Vicky didn't want to go back, but I did. And so I went back. And the concert was the same guy that was singing on the CD, "Cloud by day, fire night, fire by night, I need a resting place." It was the same guy. And he like, I don't know, he lives in California, LA or somewhere. And we're in Reno. And I happened to have the CD and I was playing it. And he's like playing at the same place. And he does this whole concert. And I walked up to him at the end of the concert, like, "Dude, you are not going to believe the week that I just had." And I tell him this whole story. Well, that story I just told you, that was one kind of thin place. I would call that a thin time. or a thin season. And I have to say, like that week of being in intensive care and being by Tom's bedside, it was the most intense week of my entire life. I've never experienced anything like that before then. And, in some strange way, it felt like a software upgrade. It was like you go through this crisis and you don't know how to move through it, but you ask for wisdom and you move through it anyway. So I want to I want to tell a couple of other stories that I feel kind of connect to this. Um, in 2009, my wife and I went to Ireland for our anniversary. And we picked Ireland because her idea of a great time is like a five-star hotel, and my idea of a great time is bike riding in Mongolia. And Ireland is like a nice compromise between the two. There's always a cliff somewhere, and there's always a pub and a B&B. And so we went there, and I she was taking a nap, my wife was, and I was walking around on this little road in Lisdoonvarna, which is in the west coast. And I was feeling very stirred up and I was praying. And um, a few of you who know me know that I've had a project called Evolution 2.0 for about 20 years. And at that time, because that was about 15 years ago, I just started having a conversation with the head office, shall we say. And I go, the state of affairs between science and religion is in an abysmal state right now. Yeah. Somebody's got to do something about this. Yeah. And that would be who? And I thought, oh, I know how conversations like this go. Like, are you going to accept it or are you going to take a pass? Like, is Jonah going to go to Nineveh or is Joe going to run the other way and then get eaten by a whale and get spit up on the beach and have to go still do his thing? Like, oh, okay. All right. I think I'm supposed to say yes to this. And I said, all right, whatever it takes to slay the dragon and get this straightened out, I'm up for it. I don't know what that entails, but you're going to have to look out for me. And I just felt like a big cosmic thumbs up, and that was it. Like that was like the moment passed. And, well, so now what? And a couple months later, I was at a talk, and a guy says, a lot of you are waiting. Like there's something you're supposed to do, and you're waiting for everything to be perfect, and it doesn't work that way. You have to start with whatever you can do today and just start doing it. And I just felt like me, like he's talking to me. And I thought, okay, yeah, I committed to this thing. I wasn't sure, like, what am I supposed to do now? But the one thing that I can do is start writing a book. So tomorrow morning and every day at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to get up an hour early and I'm going to write for an hour and then I'm going to start my day. And so I started doing that. And so fast forward 3.5 years. I have now been writing for an hour every day. I have a manuscript. My agent and I had a couple of other very good selling books, business books, and my agent said he came to me and he goes, "Well, I've shopped this to 40 publishers. Every one of them said no. You don't have a PhD. You don't have the right pedigree. I can't sell this, so do whatever you want. And he handed it back to me. I was also trying to organize a $10 million prize for the origin of the genetic code. I had been working at that for 4 years. I had one verbal yes. I needed 9 more. I didn't have anything in writing, and that was stuck. And I had some family problems. My my business was stagnating, and I just felt completely stuck. And I just felt like I was banging my head against a brick wall. Well, one day we had some friends who said, "We are going on a contemplative retreat to the thin places of Ireland. Who wants to go?" And I thought, that sounds nice, but I'm way too busy for that. And my wife goes, "You need to go to that. You need to bring your friend John. Like, you guys just go." And my wife's not real bossy, and she doesn't say things like that very often. But when she does, like, "Oh, okay, you must know something I don't." And so we went, and I was in a really bad state of mind. I was miserable. I was very frustrated with a whole bunch of things in my life that weren't working. And so my mental state was, well, tell me when breakfast is and I'll show up and I'll go. I didn't know where we were or anything. And so first morning of the trip, we're having breakfast. And this friend of mine at breakfast she starts telling me about how she had just gotten married. And she says, this marriage almost didn't happen. And um, and I was single and I wanted a husband, and my relationship with Paul was falling apart, and I thought he was going to be my husband. It just wasn't working. And she said, I just decided to muster my authority and say, "God, I'm a daughter of a king, and we gotta straighten this out together." And she goes, and it did get straightened out. And she goes, "This week, you just need to be really bold about the things that you're asking for." And so all right. And so we get in the car and we go out to this cliff. If you're curious, it's called Dunquin Pier. It's the westernmost place that you can go in Ireland. And the trip was being led by these, I would call them Irish mystics from Belfast. And they had spent a whole bunch of their life working with people through the troubles of Northern Ireland and working on forgiveness and reconciliation. And this lady named Jerry Hogg, Geraldine, everybody calls her Jerry. She takes us out on this cliff, and it's a drizzly, kind of cold summer day. And we're standing on these on this thick grass overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. And she starts telling the story. She goes, "My parents sent me here to learn Gaelic, to learn the Irish language when I was 11, because they wanted me to learn Irish, and this is an Irish speaking community." And she says, "So I lived here for a summer, and every day I would come here and I would stand on this cliff and I would commune with nature. And and then I went home and I came back when I was 17, and I came back and I stood on this cliff and I heard the land speak to me, and it said, 'Hi, Jerry, where have you been? I've missed you.'" And her eyes got really huge. And she did not attempt to explain this at all. She just said, when you look at the land looks right back at you. And she says, this is a thin place. So you like go talk to God, talk to nature, go spend some time. Okay. So I go walking off on a little trail and I'm thinking about the conversation at breakfast about being bold, about asking for the things that you need. And I'm like, well, my marriage is kind of a wreck right now. And my business is at a standstill. I got this book that got turned down by 40 publishers. I'm trying to organize this private equity prize thing and it's not going anywhere. Like I am stuck. And at this particular moment, it was almost like these jet engines switched on. And it was like, it just all of a sudden felt like my connection to the head office went from phone modem to cable internet. And from that moment, the whole rest of the week became the most intense week I've ever had in my life, including the week with Tom and the cancer and all of that. It was even more intense than that. And it wasn't because we're moving fast or going to a lot of places or it was all very low RPMs, but this intensity just, and I was in this whole other space. And I really didn't know what was happening to me. Well, I just had this picture of being tethered so that like whatever the wind was doing or however things got blown around, I was going to be fine. And and a couple of days later, so maybe I want to say the next day we came back to this spot. And this on this day it was warm and sunny instead of cold and drizzly and some of us we came to the cliff and laid down in the grass. And I remember laying in the grass looking at it over the ocean and thinking, what was I all upset about like just yesterday? I can't even seem to remember. And so I want to backtrack about 2 weeks, and then I'm going to come back to this time in Ireland. Um, about 2 weeks before this trip, we went on a personal vacation. We just went over to Michigan and stayed somewhere. And my wife and I were not getting along very well. And I was trying to do my very best to like hide it from the kids and be a pleasant person on vacation. But that is a really hard time to be on a vacation. Like it doesn't even feel like a vacation. And I was really angry and we were driving back and I was just having a lot of struggle with my feelings and my emotions. And I pulled a yellow pad of paper out of the door pocket. I was writing shotgun and I grabbed a pen and I just started like praying all of my frustrations. And I started getting answers back. And I got into this whole conversation about um I was I'm I was asking questions like why am I so angry? And I got this message that my grandfather had fought in World War II. He had seen a bunch of horrible things that nobody should ever have to see. He had come home with a lot of depression and anxiety that he didn't know how to deal with. And then he had passed that to his mom, and my mom passed it to me. And now I had the same depression and anxiety. And and this went on for probably 45 minutes, and I'm just writing as fast as I can, and all of this information is coming. And at the end, the message was, we need to continue having this conversation. Meet me at 6 o'clock tomorrow. So like, instead of working on your book, like, we're gonna talk to the head office. I'm like, okay, you're on. And so I started doing, every day I would get out of bed, and before I did anything else, I would just get a notebook and a piece of paper and start like asking for wisdom and writing whatever comes down. And I have a term for that. I call it Renaissance time. And I started doing that. And so I had gotten in this habit. So now I've been doing this for about 2 weeks. And now I'm in Ireland. So I wake up in the morning. It was the next day after we were laying on the cliffs. And I'm journaling, and I'm asking questions, and I'm getting answers back. And in the conversation, like, the voice speaks to me and says, hey, Perry, you know that like anger, fear, OCD hairball thing that you've been like really wrestling with? And I'm like, yeah, we're going to get rid of it today. Okay. What do you want me to do? And the answer is, I want you to go back to Dunquin Pier and lay in the grass. But it wasn't get in the car and drive over there. It was, I want you to sit in your bed with your notebook. And I want you to imagine that you're laying in the grass. And that's good enough. Okay. And so I kind of get myself back into that space. All right, now push it out. And I did, and I felt it leave. Now I'm going to guess from the vibe of this group, I think there's a lot of people in this group that have wrestled with emotional head trash and stuff. It doesn't always let go very easily. Sometimes it just hangs on. And I had been fighting this, and I just felt it leave. And I'm like, what was that? And like, how does this work? Like, you go to Ireland and you lay on a cliff, and then the next day, like, what is going on here? And I was just completely mystified by this. And I'm like trying to make sense of it. And well, over the next couple of days, I kept asking and inquiring about this, and like what was that ball of fear, and why did it leave now? And the answer that I got was, when you were born, your umbilical cord was wrapped around your neck, and you were suffocating, and you were absolutely terrified. And you had some brain damage, and I healed your brain damage, and I gave you some extra, and you picked up a passenger. And that negativity has been hanging on to you your whole entire life, and you've been playing whack-a-mole, and every time you would like do some inner healing thing is just move around. Well, it's gone now, and it's not coming back, because Jerry tapped you into the Celtic stream, and like, it had to leave. I'm like, okay. Now I don't know. I don't know what to think of this. I've never had this happen to me before. I'm kind of mystified by it. Um, and I come from the Christian tradition, and I was kind of puzzled, like, does this happen? Like, how does this work? And I got into this conversation with another guy on the trip, and he goes, my Bible keeps falling open to Genesis 28. Well, Genesis 28 is a story that's called Jacob's Ladder. And Jacob is on the run, and he's had this big enmity with his brother Esau, and he goes and he lays down on a rock, and he has this dream of a stairway to heaven and angels going up and down, and he has this conversation with God, and God blesses him. And then he wakes up and he goes, "This is an amazing place," and he calls it Bethel, which means house of God. So my friend Trevor, he reads this, and all of a sudden, like, it clicks in place. I'm like, oh, that was a thin place. And thin places are places where, stuff that doesn't normally move all of a sudden starts moving. And you're in a thin place and you're having a Bethel experience. And like, oh, okay. And like, this is starting to make sense. Um, and then I kind of started connecting the dots to some other experiences I had. So for example, one time I went to the Western Wall in Jerusalem, and you go there and there's rabbis praying and there's people putting little pieces of, they're writing little requests and they're putting on pieces of paper and they're sticking them in the wall. And when you go there, you can absolutely feel there is something different about this place. You can feel this energy. I had a very similar experience in Montreal. I walked into the Notre Dame Cathedral and I wasn't anticipating this. I wasn't expecting it. I just figure I'm walking into this beautiful building. This will be interesting. But the minute I walked in the door, I felt this energy and presence. It was unmistakable. And so I started connecting the dots to this. And a few weeks later, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I was describing all this to him, and he didn't miss a beat. Um, it didn't weird him out or any. He was right with me, and he goes, "So Perry, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to make your business a thin place, to make your personal presence a thin place." And a really interesting thing happened maybe 2 or 3 weeks later. I had a little workshop in my office. In fact, it was right here in this room that I'm sitting in. And so we had 4 entrepreneurs in the room and a couple of spouses, and we were workshopping. And at the end of the first day, we're all having dinner. And a guy says, "I had so much fun today, I didn't think about my lawsuit all day long." And I go, "Lawsuit?" And he goes, "Oh, never mind. I don't want to get into all that." Okay. So the next morning, I was doing my journaling in the morning before everybody showed up. And I wrote the question in my notebook: what should I talk to the group about today? And I get this answer back: talk to them about forgiveness and inner healing and ask the guy about his lawsuit. Okay. So they all show up at 9 o'clock. We do housekeeping. It's 9:20. We're about to get started. I go, "Oh, I'm supposed to ask you about your lawsuit. Tell me about your lawsuit." And he and his wife are sitting there and they're like, "Oh, well, so I got this employee and she says I sexually harassed her. I did not, but it's my word against hers. There's no witnesses. Um, this lawsuit's been hanging over my head for 2 years. It's absolutely miserable. Um, and I just hate it." And and I said, "Well, I'm going to ask you to do something really counterintuitive. I want you to forgive her, and I want you to tell God that you want him to bless her and give her good things in your life, even though she's trying to, strangle you. And he looks at his wife, and they look at me, and they're like, okay, yeah, I get it. All right. Okay. And I say, one thing that I've seen with a lot of people is that when people are struggling with financial things, sometimes like there's forgiveness issues in their life, and when they straighten that stuff out, like other problems get solved. Okay. And then his phone buzzes, and he pulls his phone out, and he goes, "It's my attorney. He wants me to call." I go, "Take the call. It's good news." And his wife goes, "It's never good news when that guy calls. Take the call." So he leaves. And I look at my watch. It's 4 minutes later. So we've been talking about this for 4 minutes. He takes the call. He comes back 10 minutes later, and he goes, "They want to settle. And they're willing to settle for $10,000 less than I decided would be okay 2 weeks ago." He wrote a $120,000 check, and it was over. Now, what do you think? Do you think there's any connection between him forgiving the lady and settling the lawsuit 10 minutes later? Or you think that's just like a coincidence? Well, you get to decide. I know what I think. Um, I came back from that Ireland trip, and within the next few months, I got three. I went to publishers myself without an agent. I got 3 offers. I picked one. I did get investors to fund my prize. In fact, I realized I have some kind of spiritual experience every time I go to Ireland. And my wife calls Ireland my legal mistress, and like every few months she'll go, "Well, you haven't like been to Ireland in a while. Don't you think you're overdue?" And I'll go. And I just want to make an observation that thin places often exist in highly contested, even sometimes war-torn locations like Ireland or Israel. And spiritual energy seems to concentrate in those places, and it's capable of positive energy or negative energy. And you need to engage with it very intentionally, and you can. And so I want to do a little guided meditation with you. And the best way would it be if you just have something to write with. And I'm going to give you a question that you can put out there. And when you ask the question, I want you to write the answer that comes back to you. Oh, I see. Is forgiving ourselves? Yes. I didn't even read the rest. Yes. Forgiving yourself is, and asking for forgiveness. Like we all have guilt, and we all have things that we're ashamed of, and we all have things that we should have done, could have done better. And so, yeah, we need to come clean about that. And, and if heaven can forgive us, then we should set aside our ego and forgive ourselves too. So when you get an answer to the question, do not edit, do not think, do not process, just write, like write whatever comes. It doesn't have to make any sense, just write it. And so the first thing I want you to do, when I talked about that numinous sensation of being in a spiritual space and you pick up on it, I want you to anchor yourself in a place where you had that experience before. And I want you to time travel. I want you to click your heels and go back to Kansas. And I want you to imagine that place again, just like I imagined laying in the grass when I was laying in my bed. And I want you to go into that space. And here's the first question that I want you to put out and just receive whatever answer comes back. So the first question is, what do you want me to know about me? Go. Write whatever comes. Do not edit. What do you want me to know about me? And I'm going to give you a good more minute to just write down whatever comes. Okay, to give you another question now. Next question. What do you want me to know about you? Ask the question, what do you want me to know about you? Okay, to give you another question now. Who do I need to forgive? So whoever you wrote down, I just have a little affirmation. I want you to, as though you're speaking to that person, I want you to say, I forgive you, I release you, you owe me nothing. Are you ready for another question? What lie am I believing? What lie am I believing? And I have one last question for you to put out there. Again, just write down whatever answer comes. Don't edit, don't think. What is the truth? So in a minute, I'm going to open things up and we can just have a conversation about whatever comes to mind for everybody. Take a few more minutes to write down whatever is coming to you and we can chat. Did anybody experience a shift or something you want to share?
Harry, so I know the first few questions I was like, it still taking me a few seconds to start writing. It's coming to the last one, when there's no thinking, no idea, like my answer came right away. What is truth? Love. Like so simple, so clear. And I just start like crying. That's it, period.
Amen, sister. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. What are some other thoughts that have surfaced?
Had a long list of people to forgive. I didn't have time to forgive them all before we moved on. I had to circle back.
Don't we all? Yeah, you can take as much time as you need for that in coming days. There's something of, holding something against somebody can be a burden that's on you. It's almost like you're making it your business instead of, or it's not, maybe that's not your business to carry on your shoulders. I also think that forgiving somebody can be sort of like, let's say that you have an alcohol problem and you don't want to solve your alcohol problem, but you want to solve your alcohol problem. It's enough to just want, even if you don't want. Well, I don't really want to forgive this person. Well, do you want to forgive the person? Start there. Let's just start with want to forgive the person and just open that little window and let some sunshine in.
Perry, the phrase wanting to want is quite powerful. Did you come up with that on your own, or is that someone else's collocution?
I don't remember. I can't imagine I'm the first person to ever said that.
Well, you aren't, because I said it, but not, but not the same way, which is the point. I said it actually a very different way, which is why it jumped out to me that there was more poetry and actually perhaps even better prose in your phraseology. We have people work on behavior change just like an anointed minister does. And how uncomfortable would you be if I called you an anointed minister within a certain subculture of the world that I have some respect for, actually?
That would
You're
be
good
fine.
with that? Yes, I thought you might be.
Yeah, I'm a pastor in disguise. In fact, I'm a pastor's kid. So
Yeah, there you go.
my life looks very, very, very different than my dad's ever did, but there's still a thread.
I'm a rabbi's protege, and boy, my form of Judaism is not even called Judaism.
Yeah.
But it's the same mission.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what the mission was. So yeah, the phrase just to make a logical parcellation, since this is medical actually, as opposed to a spiritual or faith-based. So you could, the behavior change could be big or small. It could be something that you want to reduce or get rid of, or it could be something you want to increase or initiate. You see how we make it binary? And then it could be something that you're committed to changing, or you're merely willing to consider. But your phrase want to what is, I think, better than merely willing to consider. So could I use that in my ministry?
Yeah, you can. And for those of you who are math geeks, it's like the second derivative.
Don't start me
Instead of the
on
first
math.
derivative.
Adam is
You just have a
smiling.
second derivative that wants to change direction. I want to decelerate. Okay, that's enough.
Don't start me on this pathway with mathematics, because I can't stop. I have not overcome that yet. Adam is and Yan are smiling because they know what happens. But yeah, it's a second derivative, but it's in applied category, theoretic mathematics, topos theory. I'm sorry, I just had to say it. Now I said it. That's my religion a little bit. But thank you for showing us modern US shamanism. That's working in the culture. So
Did you say you got the same answer for the different question or what?
I did. Yeah, it was pointing towards my heart space. Yeah. Mhm.
You mean the word love?
Yeah, the word love didn't come up, but yeah. What is the truth, and what came is what lies deepest in your heart.
Yan, you remember the phrase "jian ai, mo zi," even love? It's one of the ancient philosophers from before the Han Dynasty. There was that jian ai, like,
见, I
yeah, universal.
and
That's
what's
the old Chinese word for it.
兼爱,
墨子,
墨子, what is
more like more.
墨子
Yeah,
呢?
more, ink.
Yeah.
墨子, I think. 知爱是就是兼爱.
I'm thinking now that there's a little bit of a difference in those answers, Yen, in that you can also think of the heart as a source of a particular flavor of wisdom. And so what you connect with there can certainly, you could say it's grounded in love, but it might also whisper things that are in different directions.
Also, it can make mistakes. You have to test it in the real world. That's a big one.
Yes, and that's the dance between the heart and the mind. Yes.
Sorry, I mean, Perry Adam may want other people to reflect more, but after I was so curious what Shenzhen means, if we grounded in love, if we touch in our like deepest desire in the heart, may also make mistake? Or what do you mean? Adam, Perry, you can decide late if we do it later.
But
or-
otherwise, it'll become a private conversation.
No,
I
no.
think we'll talk later on this.
Okay. But okay, I guess I sorry, I'm just like, we may try different, we may make mistakes, but grounded in love will make a mistake. I just trying to understand what's the
Well,
point.
love gives you freedom to make mistakes.
And to take feedback.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's what you meant. Not like
Yeah.
this is a oh yeah. Like
I'm sure it's common sense. It's not that special. If you've gone into a connection in all directions because space-time has become thin, you should be able to listen to the feedback that ordinary people give you.
yeah. And also this forgiveness thing become lighter. It's not so heavy. Forgive whom, like just so love. Okay, all right, yeah. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perry, I was wondering if I could ask you about your questions. I guess a question about your questions, which is,
Yeah.
have you tried different orderings, or is this like, how did you come up with the order you did it in? Because I'm noticing that sort of the question, who do I need to forgive, comes before going into like, what lie might I be believing? And I'm wondering if that is like an intentional kind of opening. Like it sort of did feel like in myself, I guess, I was being guided towards something sort of harder and harder to process
Mm.
as I was opening to, I guess, to like love or forgiveness. First to myself, then to forgiveness, then to like addressing like a lie, which is kind of like um a big thing to face. Like you I don't know if you could go straight to what lie am I believing as the first question, I guess, is part of what I'm curious about. It seems like you're like guided into that over time.
Well, so I did not super carefully like architect the questions like there was some big formula, but what I can say is that the question started with identity, which I think is the deepest level of being. And then it went, so the first question, what do you want me to know about me, is me asking the divine about my identity. And then the second question is asking the divine about the divine identity. And those seem much more foundational and prime. Then who do I need to forgive is me in relationship to others. And then what lie am I believing? What is the truth? That's more intellectual. I think that's a less deep. So I'm progressing from the deepest towards the shallow, if I could use that terminology. I think asking about lies and truth would be getting it backwards.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I felt it was the opposite in myself. So I just think that's interesting. Like I felt like going like higher to deeper. Maybe not, I wouldn't necessarily say shallow, but
And I'm not criticizing. If you went in the opposite direction, I have no judgment or criticism about that at all. I just felt like I should start with an identity. I think a lot of human tragedies start with an identity, some misunderstanding of who we are in our relationship to the most, to source. Did anybody else have an awareness that you hadn't had before that came to you today?
That immediately,
Oh, sorry, I can't turn my camera on. I can't go into it much right now. But yes, and thank you. This has been great.
Thank you.
the place that immediately came to mind. I spend a lot of time in liminal spaces very intentionally. But the space that came to mind was the deep playa at Burning Man, where I haven't been there for 8 years, but it's like the liminal, it's the edge of the edge of the edge of a place that doesn't even exist most of the time. And I found myself sorting into that space. Hold on. Like yeah, son.
Like a zombie.
He's not a zombie. He's a 4-year-old child. He's your friend.
He's not 4. How old are you? 4? I'm 4.
I guess like there was something about the answer to the first question, of which of course you asked after you asked us to pick a place, but the first and second questions felt like they were structured by this realization that like I go out to these places that are at the very edge of everything, and then they're crowded, and so I go further, and that I find great peace out in the undeveloped sort of frontier of these ephemeral places. And when I asked about what you want me to know about myself, it said, you're cold because you were left out in the cold, but now you choose the cold. And there is warmth. And it's like, yeah, that you go out into the deep playa in the middle of the night when like the heat of all of the people at the center of that city is, you're just out in the middle of the desert. There's nothing there except for these little dots of like art installations and weird stuff to stumble on. You find these little moments of warmth out in that place, but then you're within earshot of this extremely hot, loud, exciting party. And then I asked what you want me to know about you, and it said I am hot, but I won't burn you. And there was one more thing. Hold on. It said, I am a place where people gather. And I was just taken by the way that sort of feeling and like metabolism, like biological metabolism and geography and like this sort of narrative of like trauma and healing, we're all wrapped up in those 3 points of like, you know, like the way that people choose to, like, there's something that like I chose, that place came to me because I do consider it numinous and you know, sacred, but it's like, it's also like sacred in a way that most everyone else who goes there thinks that like they're going there um in a much more kind of like extroverted way, where like the core of it is the hot spot. It's like where you want to be. And like for me, I have this history of like going to festivals and then finding the hill just outside the fence of the festival and sitting there and like that being my spot. And then like, you know, kind of like wondering why nobody likes me. Yeah. And so it's just like, I guess the message was about, you know, that's all well and good. But, you know, the last thing I'll say about it is like just last night, there's a, you know, Burning Man is going on right now. And here in Santa Fe, we have this event called Zozobra, which has been going on for over 100 years, which is a big effigy burn that happens the same weekend. And it's very sort of chthonic and weird, and in a similar way has been taken over by commercial forces. And I made the decision last year not to go because it's just like a cash grab and it's a throng of drunk people, and my friends throw this little satellite party at a kava bar a few blocks away. And it's like we're the Lost Boys of the city, you know, wash up at this like sober bar, and they throw their own little burn. And yet, like we like in a much smaller crowd, my wife and my kids and I got right up in the front row when they burned this like 5-foot tall thing instead of this like 60-foot tall thing. And we're standing there, and I had precisely the kind of experience that I've had sitting in the front row at the big burn in Black Rock City, where it's like whoever you end up sitting next to in that space is like precisely the person you're supposed to sit next to. That you know, we gathered around this to watch this like ridiculous kind of fumble, like they couldn't really even keep it on fire. But the woman standing right next to us, we got into a really like meaningful conversation with her. I commented on one of her tattoos, and it turns out that she's a tattoo artist. And it was just like there was a sense of like, oh, you're the person that my wife and I were looking for to commemorate our anniversary with like, you know, get our shared tattoos. And like probably also, you know, like you're the person who's going to do it, and you're also like automatically immediately a friend. And it was just like, well, there's kind of a joke in there, which I'm used to in these kinds of situations, where it's like a riddle or a turn or a paradox, where it's like there isn't really a center and an edge in a clear way, that it's you know, like thinking about yourself on the margin or the frontier may be true in one dimension, but in hyperspace, like every point is also a center, and like every point is also the place. So it's like you may decide you don't want to go to the big party, you're going to go to the small party, or you may decide that you want to get out of the city and go for a hike, and yet somehow you still end up in Congress with you still end up at a gathering point. And it's not that these distinctions become meaningless so much as it is that they become kind of, I don't know, pale or transparent to something that's going on at another level of order. And that is where I will end this rant. So thank you.
Thank you. Adam, where would you like to go from here?
Well, thank you so much for sharing yourself with us and guiding us through this practice. I know I got a lot of it, and can see others have as well. I can stick around a little longer for whoever wants to keep talking, but I also want to be mindful of usually around 90 minutes. That's what we ask people if they can show up for as much as they can. So if anyone needs to go, you can go in peace. And I'm so glad you joined us, and thank you for sharing presence with us. I guess I have a few additional or a few thoughts. Uh, s- uh, I guess I'll just start with one of them because other people might have thoughts that they haven't gotten in there also. But so there's this uh, agreement that yeah, love is so fundamental, and once you guide us through this kind of practice of coming in touch with a communication or a communion with something like love, like divinity. There's a feeling of coming home, and there's a feeling of rightness about it. So why is it so hard so much of the time? If why is it so uncommon? Even for people who have had experiences that point to this kind of uh, different way you can be. Just- why is grace so elusive for people? Or why does it seem that way?
Well, the first thing that for me that comes to mind is that I could go on big, long intellectual rabbit trails about trying to explain why, but what if why is not the most helpful question? What if it's a what, a who, a how, or a where? What if what, where, who, and how questions are more get you there more easily than a why question? So you can make it a how question. How do I walk in love even though it's so uncommon? Where or with who can I walk in love even though it's so uncommon? What if it's not a matter of availability? What if it's a matter of attention? What if love and divinity is as close as your next breath? What would that mean? Where can I go to get my tank filled? I don't want to discount the why part of the question, Adam. I hope you don't hear me discounting it.
I mean, it's not, no, it's not a discount. And actually, you know, as someone who usually lives in the why, I know it often is actually an obstacle to what actually I really want often. Like when I like first started like sitting in meditation, like I was always, well, why this, why that? And I was like, Adam, just try it. And and that's like this insistence on like having like this intellectual understanding before I venture in a direction, before like I open myself up to an experience. Like I have to understand it completely. If the experience is a felt sense, sometimes I've you know, the desire for the why, and it can be helpful, is to like get closer to that. It can compete, like it can put me in a different kind of mode where I'm not actually open. And also I just don't, and I guess it's almost like a, yeah, like a cart horse problem. It's like if the um mm, if I'm waiting for this perfect intellectual understanding of for around why, I oftentimes never begin really to take the step in the direction I need to go. So like, you know, what if love and divinity is as close as your next breath? What if just like on the next breath, you try breathe, you just let yourself breathe a little more deeply and let it.
Yeah.
My meditation would have gone much better over the years if I had that stance, I think.
Yeah. Is there anybody who hasn't spoken up that wants to say hello to everybody and mention an experience you had today? Daryl.
Yeah, I'll have a word. Just like Yin, love was the last answer. And for me, it was also the first answer. I don't know why it didn't make a lot of sense. It was just a single word, love. What do you want me to know about me? And the second one was like, it's okay, I love you. So love came up quite frequently. And I found I've worked a lot with forgiveness in my life, and I try not to hold grudges. If I'm ever in a conflict, I try to consciously do a loving kindness meditation for the person I'm in conflict with, and to show them love, and to, you know, I don't know if you know I'm sure the Buddhist practice of metta, to do a loving kindness meditation. Um, so I didn't realize there was someone for me to forgive, but I found a person.
Hmm.
And I didn't really realize how deeply seated this dislike of this person was, and that it was even a weight that I was carrying. But
Yeah.
it was pretty emotional to do that. Yeah, so yeah.
Well, I salute you for making that transaction. And
Yeah, and to have the imagery of like, it was like, I release you, you owe me nothing, something like that. This person wronged my family. Um, yeah, my wife. But yeah, I found it very, very, very powerful. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess that's about all. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think we can all identify with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And forgiving does not mean disrespecting or dismissing the pain. In fact, it honors it.
Yeah.
To forgive is to acknowledge that something wrong has been done and that right and wrong are real.
Yeah.
And that there are like moral bank accounts that we have with other people and that they have with us. And I think forgiveness acknowledges the reality of all those things.
Mhm.
It's a way of respecting it. It's way better than sweeping it under the rug or saying, well, time heals all wounds or whatever
Yeah.
trite.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's poison in me, too, so
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Right.
maybe you can do some little ritual with a bucket of water or paper clips or sand castles or I know, like some physical way of acting out your decision to forgive this person.
Yeah.
It helps us, we're physical beings, we're not just brains in a body.
Sure. Yeah, so some ritual of sorts, yeah, in the world. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, that's all really good stuff, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate your sharing. Yeah. And I took myself back, for a lot of time, but back to the mat on where I journeyed on ayahuasca. And to me, that was one of the most thinnest experiences of the veil for me ever. And yeah, so but anyway, yeah, thank you. I just thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been very special to share this time with y'all.
Yeah.
I need to go in a couple minutes. I have a hard stop, but it's an honor to be here with you, this group of people.
Likewise.
It's an honor to be with you, Perry. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for coming and sharing today. Yeah, I'm really glad we were able to have an experience like this together because the point is of this group is to have the deepest possible understanding we can of what is value, what is love, what is beauty, and ideally, to the extent possible, bring together the intellectual understanding and the felt experience of it, which is not always easy to do. And so having time like this together where we can really settle into like, what is it like? What could it be like? How do we show up for ourselves and each other, both in the day-to-day and like in the story you shared, like when life gets very, very real, which it often does, and inevitably will. So
I just want to bless everybody. We're entering the last 4 months of the year. I want to bless all of us, including me, to walk in love, to find divinity as close as our next breath. That maybe it can be easy instead of hard, and that we just set an intention to bring a thin space everywhere we go as we receive. So thank you all.